Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Min-Kyu working at KDI. This is a joint work with Dr. Sung-Bin Jo, who presented a credit rating agency paper this morning. This is about one of the impacts of the global shocks on the Korean economy, the Korean financial markets. We try to understand what happened to the firms during the crisis, especially seeing through the stock markets. For your easier understanding, I can rephrase the title in economic jargon. You can say foreign exchange exposures of Korean firms in brief. Okay. Yes. These are the contents I'm going to present today. First, motivation. The motivation is, frankly, we had a practical motivation of this. A question was raised seriously by some policymakers and so-called opinion leaders in Korea about the end of the last year. The question was basically about whether the foreign exchange rate, for example, Korean won to US dollar, should be at high level to maintain the export to abroad. For the smooth recovery from the crisis. So we need some empirical evidence to answer for it. There was a direct motivation for this project. Other than this, foreign exchange rate shock and its management are one of the all-time concerns to the Korean economy. In fact, during the recent crisis, bad management of the FX risks damaged Korean banks as well as the non-financial firms. One of which we usually cite is the infamous KICO accident. The KICO is a kind of knock-in, knockout structured derivatives, OTC derivatives, which is against the foreign exchange rates. And we experienced the huge deficits in the historical deficits in the derivatives account, in the capital account as well. In a nutshell, we try to answer first who or which firms will benefit from the Korean won depreciation or appreciation. Second, what characteristics of firms are tightly related with vulnerability to foreign exchange shocks. So we measured foreign exchange exposures of firms and compared with various firm characteristics such as industry, export, import, and large company affiliation, etc., etc. Of course, we already have many ways to measure the foreign exchange exposures. Among them, we selected a way of using stock returns following the Adler and Dumas and Bonar and Wang and many others. The idea is pretty simple. It is a variation of CAPM and CAPM. I call this CAPM plus FX premium model. The gamma here in the regression model, the coefficient of the FX premium term is measured to be foreign exchange exposures. That is, the exposure is defined to be sensitivity of firm values to FX premiums in this model. Yes. And the data. We use stock returns of non-financial firms listed in KRX, Korea Exchange, including KOSDAQ, from year 2007 to year 2008, and confined our analysis to the firms which have stock data at least for consecutive 26 weeks. It's a half year. And FX premiums of US dollar, Japanese yen, Chinese yuan, and euro are separately constructed using corresponding 3-year government bond yield. And the world FX premium is the average of the FX premiums, which is weighted by international trade with Korea. And in most cases, we measured foreign exchange exposures for each currency because correlation among the exchange rates are very high, like this. So potentially the multiple linearity problem occurs. a background idea of the model. Yes, a background idea why CAPM term is added in many literatures like this is to control, I believe, the psychological effects or a macroeconomic environment in the stock returns. So the literatures do not put much weight on the CAPM term when interpreting the results. But I feel it is worthwhile to check a simple regression of market returns on world FX premium to have an overall picture of the stock market in Korea. Correlation of return of Kospi index, which is the market index of KRX, and the world FX premium is negative. Like this. This seems to be a contradiction to the common belief that the Korean economy is highly export-oriented economy. But we cannot assure of the contradiction either, because as already documented, the correlation the market return and FX premium, the correlation of them contain various informations like psychology and other macroeconomic environment. For example, the events of the foreign exchange increases are often associated with the country risks. So without the serious understanding of the firm-specific fundamentals, the market sometimes can drop a lot. Now we measure foreign exchange exposure of each firm controlling CAPM term and categorize them by industry. The interesting thing here is that, you can add up the second column, the number. Then you can see the only 16 firms among 985 firms show significantly positive exposure, and 241 firms are negative. This is the real contradiction to the common belief that the Korean economy is highly export-oriented. When Korean won depreciates, only a small number of firms benefit, even though we believe we are export-oriented. If you are used to the Korean company names and Korean firms, you can easily imagine which firm is this number, the small numbers in this table. For example, in the industry of electronics, the two is in the top row, the Samsung and LG Electronics, and others are negative or very neutral to the exchange rates. And then we grouped by industry and measured the exposures. That is, these are the foreign exchange exposures of industry portfolios. Industries of metal products. Oh, we don't see the arrow there. This is the metal products here, and we have electronic industry. And in the next page, we have motor vehicles here. They are all positive, but for example, wood pulp is seriously negative, and construction is fairly negative. So and then I'm going to show on a table here. Yeah, this is the table of the exposures in export and import. Seemingly weird thing you can find if you see this table. Both groups of exporting firms and importing firms show positive exposures. So we grouped into 4 categories to see the details of this. Type 1 is the groups of firms of export and import together. And type 2 is the export, only export and no import. And type 3 is no export and import. And type 4 is no export and no import. As for the first type, the export and import together, the exposure is positive, so we can infer the export effects dominate. The second type, which is only export and no import, shows a negative exposure, but a positive exposure to the Japanese yen. So we infer the export of this type is mostly related to the export to Japan. And type 3 and 4 are as expected. Type 3 is negative numbers, and type 4 is insignificant. And another weird thing we have. This table compares the net foreign assets firms and liability firms. The results are not very intuitive either. Net liability firms significantly positive exposure. We guess it is because they are huge export firms like Samsung, Hyundai, POSCO, and etc. Now, you already sensed that the non-standard results, seemingly, seem to be related with very big firms in Korea. So we checked the business affiliation. Yes. The types of business affiliations are defined by a few Korean business-related acts. I don't explain what each affiliation means here, but the results are very strong regardless of the affiliation definition. Definitely, big affiliated firms show positive exposures. So far, the foreign exchange exposures of Korean firms have been estimated by a cap and plus FX premium model. We take one step further from typological analysis and try to find which characteristics of firms significantly affect or related with the exposures. That is, we do so-called determinants analysis here. In a regression model with exposures estimated in the left-hand side and firm characteristic variables in the right-hand side, the variables are selected referring to other literatures, firm size, usage of FX derivatives, fixed capital investment, import, export, foreign assets positions. The hypotheses of these variables are quite imaginable, so I leave them out. Yes, I have one thing. Okay. I have a reason to put the fixed capital in the analysis. The reason is, is that fairly large amount of fixed capital in Korea is basically imported goods from abroad. So I think it is more than 60% seeing the Korean input-output table. That's the reason why I put the fixed capital investment in the analysis too. And okay, this is the results of few regressions. Model 1 and 2, their samples include all the firms regardless of size of foreign exposures. But model 3 and 4 are restricted to the negatively exposed firms. The size variable here is significantly positive to the exposure, but we cautiously need to see different implications according to the positiveness or negativeness of the exposures. In other words, for positively exposed firms, the exposure goes away from zero as the size increases. On the contrary, negative exposure comes near to zero as the size increases. That is, smaller firms of negative exposure and bigger firms in the positive exposure are more sensitive to the change of the foreign exchange rates. And the effects of derivatives usage depend on the sample pools. In the whole sample, it is significantly negative, but it is not very significant in negative exposed group, which is around 80% of the whole sample, I think. But we do not assure that the hedging behavior of negatively exposed firms is not active because firms have other internal hedging tools than the derivatives. For example, matching leads and lags, netting price adjustment, etc. And about export, we have two variables associated with export. Export one is a kind of the export level, the normalized by the sales variable, and export two is the square term of export one. In model 1 and 2, export 1 is significantly positive and its square term is negative. So we can imagine foreign exchange exposure are concavely related with foreign exports. As the firm's export increases, the foreign exchange exposure increases up to a certain level, but after that it declines. Well, maybe it is possible because firm of very high export concentration employs various types of foreign exchange risk management tools. On the contrary, the negatively exposed firms do not reveal any significant relationship between export and the exposures. This is possible too because negative exposure is more about the import behaviors, not the export behaviors. Okay. Yes, I would like to conclude my presentation. First, only a very small number of the firms turn out to be positively exposed to foreign exchange rates. So if there is a intentional currency depreciation, like some interrupting the policy, then benefits will sink into the small number of big companies. But on the contrary, the recent the high spikes of exchange rates, like the recent few days, the damages are more serious, can be more serious to the small number of big companies. And the second, the number 3 in the slide, in the group of negatively exposed firms, smaller firms are more sensitive to the foreign exchange variation. So I think they need to be encouraged to manage the risks more effectively. Actually, the recently financial regulator tried to launched, I think, a program to small firms about the risk management education, I think. Anyhow, this is all I prepared. Thank you.